The San Rafael Swell is a hidden jewel with red rock, stunning cliffs and walls, buttes and mesas, fantastic vistas and wide open spaces. Here, people can experience the beauty that solitude offers, as well as the excitement of leaving the beaten path and following a challenging trail. The Bureau of Land Management, or BLM, manages this vast area, nestled inside this unique place. Waiting to be discovered by new visitors to the swell are places with names like Hidden Splendor, Copper Globe, Muddy Creek, Tomsich Butte, Little Susan, and Lucky Strike. The BLM's Resource Management Plan designates these abandoned mine areas as areas of critical environmental concern and ensures that their history is preserved. The crumbling remains of mines on the swell tell a story. They are a piece of our history, a link to the past. President Abraham Lincoln called Utah the treasure house of the nation because of its rich endowment of mineral resources. Mining these resources created the wealth that built Utah. Hearst, Kearns, Eccles, Walker, these are the families who made their fortunes from mining and built the backbone of Utah: the roads, buildings, banks, and stores, and schools. The San Rafael Swell had a unique endowment, uranium, giving it a special place in Utah history. Starting in the 1890s with Madame Curie up until the present, uranium is a commodity desired for many purposes, from scientific and medical research, to powerful bombs, to fueling power plants. Listening to the miners tell their stories gives a fascinating glimpse into a world far removed from what we experience today. This video was made to memorialize and document the hardy men and women who lived and worked at the mines.
My full name is Teddy Cornelius Ecker. We raised in a situation where we spent the good part of our life out underneath the cedar tree, I say, or out on the desert, or punching cows, or mining, or whatever. Charles Gibbons in Hanksville, he sold his store to my grandpa Ecker in 1906, and he was involved in the mining and promoting of Temple Mountain. The ore had been discovered there, but that's when it first started, and probably because of Madame Curie's seeking more uranium, and it was brought into Green River.
Well, it boomed in the 50s and got quite high. I know at one time the mining claims that was going for $100 a claim.
And at that time, everybody was talking uranium. That was the biggest thing going on in the United States. People were buying four-wheel drives, which were brand new at the time, and looking at Geiger counters, buying uranium stocks, and it was something everyone talked about.
There was a definite decrease, like in the 70s, late 60s, 70s, real decrease in the amount of activity that was in the San Rafael Swell.
It's a commodity that is like oil or wheat or soybeans. When they need it, the price goes up, which encourages people to go to mining. Then when they overproduce, the price goes down, which can't make a living at it. So you have to try something else and sit around and wait for the price to go back up again, see?
We'd go out and borrowed a Geiger counter, and we'd get along the front of the face of a cliff or something where you could pick up the uranium, and then we would go up on top of the bench and start staking claims.
If you went to an ant bed and looked in the ant bed for little pieces of yellow uranium, that indicated that there was probably something down below. So you always look there. And also in the milk vetch plant. The milk vetch plant was very prevalent in where the uranium was. So that's where you look to. And we would just mine by hand. We had picks and shovels and wheelbarrows and bars and big bars. And then we drill holes by hand drilling the hole.
A lot of this work, the mucking in these old mines was done with wheelbarrows, transporting, and carbide lights. And there was a lot of ventilation coming through them old diggings. You couldn't keep your carbide light going, so every once in a while you'd be in the dark.
Temple Mountain has got the mountain, then it's got a flat plateau that runs out on it, and the mines are all underneath there. But up on top, they drilled down, and with a big drill that drilled a 36-inch round hole, and then they lifted the core drill out, and then they built a building or a shaft over the top of it, and they'd lower the miners down the 3 by 3 foot diameter hole, and then they'd start mining out.
And them calyx holes were great. They were just like a gun barrel. In fact, you drop that bucket so fast that I believe sometimes it made a hydrostatic pressure. It was so tight that it wouldn't go any faster.
You must understand that when that guy went down in the bucket was dropped below where he wanted to make his adit in. So he sat in that bucket with a drill machine and drilled small holes of maybe 3 feet or maybe 2.5 feet into that, and then pull the bucket up and then explode it, and then it would fall down, and then he'd have to go down and muck it out, see.
I was really interested in the mine, and so Jack Baker, who was Pearl Baker's son, and his wife was a good friend of mine, so we went out there one day and decided we wanted to go down in the bucket. Talk about scared. That thing, I can't get these cables to work, and I said I was ready to kill him, but I wouldn't, I have never been so scared in my life. I mean, I don't know how people ever work underground.
Actually, it was a pretty safe operation, really. You know, you kind of had to look after yourself, don't do something stupid. How we ever got by, I don't know.
The amazing thing was we very seldom ever wore gloves. That was a luxury, a glove. So our hands got just calloused and cracked and sore, bleeding probably most of the time. And just horrific. Hands would be so cracked and sore and bleeding. But you had to do it in order to make a living.
Later on, after this got going good, I think there was some families there. But mostly it was just men out there trying to make a living for their family.
Tomsich Butte, there was a schoolhouse at that side, and they did, the few kids that was there, they did have a school for them. So some of them would be out there for months at a time. They would come into Green River for supplies and then go back.
The food was hauled in. All you had to do was cook it. I mean, and you made a lot of bread, and you made a lot of pies and all that kind of stuff.
We had no refrigeration or anything like that, so we had to keep our meats and things in a cooler as best we could. And then we would go to the cabin that night, because the cabin was a little further from the mine. And I'm a pretty good cook. My dad was a good cook, and all my brothers were good cooks.
And I cooked for the crew down there for a while. And And then we moved up to Star Springs to another place that was being mined. And there was another guy that was the cook over to another camp, and he had me saving all the juice off of the canned fruit and stuff. And then he'd make him a burgundy deal, you know, that'd knock your head off, you know.
Sometimes if I were cooking a roast or a pot of beans or something like that for a while, I would, at the fire in the morning, I'd start the roast or a pot of beans on top of the stove, start the roast in the oven, and then let the fire die down, and then by the time the oven cooled off, and then I'd come back in the evening, start the fire, and about an hour I'd have the roast done, see.
It was a routine deal, and everybody got fed. And we were laughing at one guy. He said he worked in a camp where they gave you a pie tin and a nail, and you nailed your plate. And you cleaned it out because you came back to that same plate because the cook refused to do the dishes. And that was a problem at any camp, is the water situation.
We had a lot of deer meat and elk meat that we were there in the wintertime. All we need to do was just hang it outside and then take it down in the morning and wrap it up in your bed. And so that's the way we lived.
The first year I went out there, three of us lived in a tent all winter. And we cooked in a Dutch oven and all ate out of the Dutch oven. So it wasn't good, it was tough.
We're standing in one portal here at the Copper Globe mine. This was opened up many years later than the original portals here. And this shaft is dug down until they hit the copper seam, and then they followed it back like a mine. But this is just the cabin where they lived. It's got a fireplace in it, and some bunk beds and that type of stuff. This is a ladder here at Copper Globe. This is a ladder that goes up this ledge. And when you look close, you can see the pick marks for the toe marks. And they would leave the cabin, come here, and walk up this ledge over the other side and jump down onto a barrel. And then they could go to the portals and work. This is the wood pile that they piled up here. What is left at it, still here at Copper Globe. And this wood was the fuel for the smelters to smelt the copper from the veins of copper they was bringing out. See in the back, the smokestack went out the back, clear back of the smelter. Here was where they put the product in. Down here, this little outlet is where they took the product out. But they could do it on a very small scale here. But everything is still intact here, and it needs to be kept that way. It's just so neat to see this historical site.
We had this old mule that I loved so well. And Dad said, something's wrong with that old mule over there tied to that cedar tree. Go over there and see what's wrong with her. So I went over there, and she was pawing. And I looked down where she was pawing, and there was a rattlesnake. So I had my old dog with me, and I didn't want to, I throw rocks at the rattlesnake, but I couldn't get through the cedar tree, so I set the dog on it. Bang! He went in there and got that rattlesnake and killed it. And old Polly, that was the mule's name, was pawing there, and she had pawed up some yellow dirt. I can't believe it. See? And so I hollered at my dad, come and look, Dad, see what this mule dug up. And sure enough, that turned out to be one of
I believe that we've got such a great history out here that we need to really preserve all these sites. You can take pictures and go to different places, and but to get the feeling, you got to see it in hand.
What I love most about it is how beautiful it is, how remote it is, and that I can come out here and prospect or camp or something without somebody bothering me.
I feel like that the public needs to get out in the swell and see what a marvelous area it is. There's no other area in the whole world it's like it.
The miners pushed out through the area, built roads and trails and things we still use today. We'd never be able to see, most people would never be able to see how beautiful the swell area is without the old uranium miners. We have to give them credit for opening up the swell and making it what it is today so visitors could go see it and enjoy them.